الرحمن علم القرآن خلق الإنسان علمه البيان الشمس والقمر بحسبان والنجم والشجر يسجدان.
Assalamu alaikum, my friends. Welcome to another episode of the Revelation Experience. I'm Meraj Mohiuddin. Today we are talking about one of my favorite surahs, Surah Al-Balad. Balad means the land, right? And this surah, it's a Meccan surah, like an early to mid-Meccan surah. That is, again, remember, this is the period of time when the Prophet Muhammad is starting to proclaim his message publicly to the Quraysh. The Quraysh are making fun of him. They are ridiculing him. They are mocking him. They are trying to punish the weaker members of society who are following the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And so they're being very nasty to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and to the community at large. Now, the surah begins, and the name is called Surah Al-Balad, comes from the very first few verses of the surah, where God swears, right? He swears by this land. And speaking of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, says, you are a legal resident of this land. So Allah says, I swear by this land. And you are a legal resident of this land.
لا أقسم بهذا البلد وأنت حل بهذا البلد.
وَأَنْتَ حِلٌّ بِهَذَا الْبَلَدِ. Hillun is like a free resident. Like you are an independent, free person who can do what you want. And yet these Quraysh are trying to suppress you. And Allah is saying, I swear by this land, and you are a legal resident of this land with full rights that they are trying to suppress the Prophet's teaching. And then Allah swears by something very interesting. He says, I swear by the bond between a parent and a child.
ووالد وما ولد.
Right? Because what could be more sacred than the bond between a parent and a child? You can't deny that. Every parent has this strong, natural, instinctive bond towards their children. Not only humans, but all of creation has this strong, natural, instinctive desire to protect and to nurture and to care for your child. That bond, as sacred as it is, God is swearing by that bond. Just like God swears by many things. He says, وَالشَّمْسِ وَاللَّيْلِ. He swears by these great signs, by the sun, by the moon, right, by the stars. Here he is actually swearing by a very powerful relationship, the bond between a parent and a child. Now, by all of these things that he's swearing, if Allah is swearing by this, then you know whatever he's about to say next is very, very important. Otherwise, he wouldn't swear by something, right? We don't say, the common thing that people say now, it's like, I swear in my mother's grave that, and they're about to say something. Whatever they're going to say is going to be important, right? They're not going to say, I swear in my mother's grave that there's a sale at Target, right? That's not worth swearing on your mother's grave for. Whatever you're going to say is going to be really big. So Allah is saying, I swear by all these things that your life is going to be difficult, that you will toil in hardship. Let's listen to these first few verses together.
لا أقسم بهذا البلد وأنت حل بهذا البلد ووالد وما ولد لقد خلقنا الإنسان في كبد.
لقد خلقنا الإنسان في كبد. Kabad is this difficulty, this hardship. Now this for me, this surah, one of my favorite surahs in the Qur'an, and it actually wasn't for the longest time. It just seemed like a surah which, wasn't having a profound impact on me until I started really listening to it. And specifically, it wasn't me. It was like my teachers who really started explaining to me the fact that Allah is swearing that you will have a tough life. Okay. See, the reason why this is important to me personally is because we live in a society where many of us are surrounded by this idea that the purpose of life is to work hard so that you can have an easy life. Okay. So that you can live a life that, you can sit back and relax. We see these in the commercials on a beach with the waves crashing, and you have like a a cool drink by your side with an umbrella hanging out of it. And that's the sign that you've made it in life, that you have now worked hard enough where you can have enough money that you can be relaxed the rest of your life. And that's what we are accustomed to. That's what all the advertising and the messaging around us says. Work hard so that you can go relax. Where here in the Qur'an, it's saying, no, life is going to be difficult. Life is going to be challenging, and you were created to toil in hardship. Kabad. Certainly you were created to toil in hardship. So Allah is saying there is no escape. Your entire life will be hardship, one way or the other. Even the people who you think are having a nice life, they actually have a lot of other hardships, right? For the people who are the most advanced, the people who have the most money, they often have the most depression. So they have other types of hardships, right? Hardship isn't just toiling physical work. You can have mental hardships, stress hardships, and so forth. Allah is saying there certainly will be hardship. Now, the reason why this surah is very powerful to me personally is for a number of reasons. The first part is in this beginning verse is that once you recognize that you are not going to avoid hardship, it kind of allows you to it gives you the freedom to just dive into hardship and recognize that, look, your purpose in life is not to just live an easy life, because you can't avoid it. God is promising here. Certainly you can't avoid the hardship. You have to just embrace the hardship, right? It's going to be a tough life. Whatever's going to happen to you, whatever you're working for, in a positive way or a negative way, life is going to be hard. So don't try to avoid it, because you never can. Once you have that mentality, you can actually now go about life diving into it, right? It's kind of like, imagine if you ever have been to the beach, right? And you kind of walk into the water, and then as you go deeper and deeper, the waves start coming to you, right? Well, if you think you're not going to get wet walking in the water, or you're not going to get hit by a hard wave at one point, you've never been to the beach. And so what you need to do, as I imagine this, I'm just trying to kind of put this in a way that maybe makes sense to you, is that every time you see a wave coming, let's just say you're kind of knee deep or like waist deep in water, and you start seeing a wave come to you, okay? If you try to brace yourself and try not to get wet, you're going to get knocked over by this wave. The easiest way to kind of survive the waves is when the wave starts coming, you actually dive under it and just let the wave roll over you, okay? The difference between the two is that the wave is going to hit you regardless, okay? Whatever you believe to be the case doesn't make it reality. The waves are going to keep coming and they're going to keep hitting you. The difference is, how are you going to approach the waves? In one instance, you're going to say, I don't want to be affected by the waves. I'm just going to stand still. Maybe the wave will go around me. It won't. It'll knock you over, and you'll feel miserable. The other approach is to be proactive and be like, look, the waves are going to keep coming. I can't stop the waves coming, but what I can do is change my approach to the waves. By when the wave comes, I will dive under the wave and continue to face the next wave. Okay, and that's kind of the way this surah has helped me personally approach life and recognize that hardship is there. My job is to live beautifully and gracefully through hardship. Because if you look at it, the prophets themselves, the most beloved to God, had the most difficult lives. So if they had the most difficult lives, who am I to think that my life should be easier or more comfortable than the lives of the prophets, peace be upon them? Of course, I too will be tested. And we ask God not to give us a test that we can't handle, and we know that He won't. But we ask that He gives us the strength to face the waves, to face the test with grace and beauty, so that we can get through the test until the next test, until our time has come. And so for me, this was a really powerful statement. Maybe many of you already have this, understanding. But for me, my understanding was, I got to work hard so I can live a life of comfort, because that was the messaging around me. And only after this surah and other things that I've read, you realize, no, life is going to be tough. And if you're living a tough life and every day is a struggle, you're probably doing something right, because that's the way it was for the best, for all of the prophets and the best companions. Okay, so let's continue on with this surah. So Allah says that we certainly created human beings to labor on and in toil and hardship. Okay, what comes after that? Allah says, does he think that there's no power over him? And while he may boast, I have wealth to waste, does he think that no one is watching him? So again, This idea that if you can accumulate enough, you think you're autonomous, you think you can buy your way through hardships? Does he think, he meaning a person, us, do we think that Allah is not watching us? If we accumulate enough wealth, if we have enough savings, do we think that we are free from the trials of life and so forth? That we can just buy our way out of things, buy our way into comfort and so forth? The verses continue. Haven't we given him a pair of eyes, a tongue and a pair of lips, and then shown him the two roads? Right? So Allah is saying, look, I gave you your faculties, your senses to see the reality. And now I am also showing you the two roads. Now this is where the surah becomes really powerful and personal for me. First of all, we established that life will be hard. Whether you are trying to avoid the difficulty of life or not, it will be difficult. So you might as well just embrace the difficulty and try to dive through it like with grace. Now God is saying, look, I gave you all these faculties of sight, of speech, and so forth, and I've shown you the two roads. What are these two roads? One of the most powerful surahs, verses in the Qur'an. He says,
فَلَقْتَحَمَ الْعَقَبَةَ وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا الْعَقَبَةُ.
He doesn't make any effort to travel the steep road, the Aqaba. And then, like you've heard so many times before, وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا الْعَقَبَةُ. What can help you understand what that steep road is? So Allah is saying, look, I gave you a pair of eyes, two eyes, and a tongue and two lips. And then I showed you the two roads. One is the uphill road, the Aqaba. وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا الْعَقَبَةُ. And what can help you understand the uphill road? So we're seeing here, there's a road that goes up, and then we can imagine there must be a road that goes down. And we have to understand, what is this steep uphill road, right? A steep uphill road is not a road that's easy to climb, right? Just by its very nature. If you're going on a hike, would you rather climb up with a heavy pack or go down with a heavy pack, right? It's much easier to go descend than to ascend. But God is saying that the path of ascension is the path that you ought to take. وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا الْعَقَبَةُ. What is that path, right? If you just left it and the surah ended right there, we might be scratching our heads and saying, okay, so this surah so far is telling us that swearing by these very important things, God is swearing that certainly life will be difficult and with toil. Okay, so I got it. I have to work hard. I can't escape a difficult life. I need to embrace a difficult life, and that is just my journey. Just like if you're an athlete, you have to embrace the challenges and the sweat and the grind of working out so that you can become the best athlete that you can. You don't get upset and be like, ugh, I gotta work out and go to the gym. Winning athletes, competitive athletes, they embrace the hurt, right? They say that, embrace the suck, embrace the hurt, embrace the pain. That's the makings of a great athlete. Allah is saying also, embrace the workout that is life. And don't you know the two ways that you can go? You can go downhill or you can go uphill. Now, if the surah just ended like that, we'd be like, okay, let's do it. Wait, what are we doing? But no, Allah makes it very clear in this surah, and that's why this surah is so powerful. What is the uphill road? Where do you want me to go? Allah, what is the workout that I have to do? What is the lifting regimen that I have to do to become an elite athlete in your eyes? An elite servant in your eyes? And in no uncertain terms, Allah gives us the answer. He says, the Aqaba, the uphill road, it is what? It is 1, the freeing of a slave. 2, or the feeding of a person on a hungry day, on a day that they are hungry. 3, or the feeding of orphans and relatives. 4, or taking care of that poor person lying in the dust.
وما أدراك ما العقبة فك رقبة أو إطعام في يوم ذي مسغبة يتيما ذا مقربة أو مسكينا ذا متربة.
The freeing of a slave, or the feeding of a person on a hungry day, on a day that they are hungry, or the feeding of orphans and relatives, or taking care of that poor person lying in the dust. That's it. I mean, incredible. This is the Qur'an in its clearest terms. This is Allah in the clearest terms saying, look, if you want to be an endurance athlete, if you're the coach, right? And he's like, look, if you want to make the Olympics, this is what you have to do. You have to do sit-ups, push-ups, jumping jacks, and you have to jog. 4 things. If you do that and you do it well and you embrace the pain of it and the soreness of your muscles and everything else it entails, you will become an elite athlete if you do this your entire life. Allah is telling us this is what you have to do. Notice, all of these things are a service to other people. You have to live a life of service to other people, and it won't be easy. But if you are freeing the slaves, what does that mean? People who are oppressed, unjustly, people who are in that strata of society who are being taken advantage of. Now, does that mean freeing of a slave? Because we don't live in times of slavery. So what does that mean to live, to free someone in time of a slave? Well, slavery is a construct, right? Now, I've talked to scholars about this. What does that mean, a slave in modern eras? Well, people are being enslaved by, our current economic system. So can you help people, help them get out of debt who are enslaved by economic oppression? Okay. If you look at the prison systems in America, it's a form of slavery. These are people who are being pulled off the streets for minimal charges, given huge sentences, being forced to work for pennies. This is a modern form of slavery. We have slavery in terms of human trafficking is a form of this. There's so many forms of slavery around us. Just because it doesn't have that idea that we have of, classical American slavery, slavery is around us. People are being oppressed around us. So taking care of the oppressed around us, freeing that people from that oppression, feeding people who are hungry. I mean, hunger itself is a major problem in the advanced world, let alone in the developing societies. Taking care of orphaned relatives, an easy one, right? Easy in terms of identifying who these people are. And then finally, the poor person lying in the dust. The poor person just lying, the people who really have the least resources to take care of themselves, taking care of those people. That's what Allah is telling us is the uphill path. Now, none of this stuff is glamorous. This work is not glamorous, which is why a lot of people might avoid it because they want to do some fancy nonprofit with, that looks shiny with bells and whistles. But it's really this kind of work. Taking care of the refugees in your own city who are escaping maybe from South America or Central America or from other parts of the world, taking care of these people who have been oppressed. That is the aqaba. That is the uphill climb, according to the Quran. Notice here, Allah did not spend all this time. What is the uphill climb? It is only, praying at night and just learning more fiqh, jurisprudence, or doing all these intellectual activities. None of this stuff was intellectual. It's all physical work that requires you to get up out of your chair, get out of your home, and go interact with other people who have less than you and help make their lives better. Enough said on that point. These people who do this, what will they have? Allah says, He will be with the believers who teach each other perseverance and compassion. The person who takes this uphill climb, he will be with his companions. And what do? They teach each other to persevere and to have compassion. These are the companions of the right. And we see this in this surah and in other surahs, like Surah Al-Waqi'ah, a very classic surah. It talks about those who are on the right and those who are on the left. The ones on the right are the ones who are blessed, who took on the challenge of life and did the most with it, as opposed to the people of the left. Who are the people of the left? Allah says the people of the left are those who rejected God's signs. Those are the companions of the left, and they will have a fire engulfing them completely. So if the people on the right are the people who took one of the roads, the uphill road, to service others, to care for humanity, to benefit people around them, then clearly the people on the left are those who were what? Who were greedy, who only cared about themselves, who only cared about acquiring and amassing more wealth, especially at the expense of other people, right? There's nothing wrong in Islam as a Muslim to be wealthy. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. We shouldn't feel guilty about that unless we are attached to that wealth. We are obedient to that wealth, and we amass that wealth at the cost of other people, right? There's nothing wrong with being wealthy, especially because that's a tool that you can now use to help other people. But if that's something that you're using to take wealth away from other people, then there's absolutely something wrong with that. And so that's what we're seeing in this surah itself. And so I just wanted to leave it at that. Surah Al-Balad, very powerful surah, a lot of meaning packed into it. And the takeaway from this is that life will be hard, my friends. So I'm sorry to break it to you, but you're not going to have an easy life. Whatever you try to do to carve out an easy life, it will bring its own hardships. So you might as well embrace the hardship. And the best way to embrace it is to take the aqaba, the uphill road. And what is that uphill road? It is the service of humanity. Big Meccan surah. Hopefully this helps you. Would love to hear your comments on this. In the next few surahs, we're going to continue with the Meccan period of the Qur'an. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Let's listen to the entire surah one time before we call it a close.
لا أقسم بهذا البلد وأنت حل بهذا البلد ووالد وما ولد لقد خلقنا الإنسان في كبد أيحسب أن لن يقدر عليه أحد يقول أهلكت مالا لبدا أيحسب أن لم يره أحد ألم نجعل له عينين ولسانا وشفتين وهديناه النجدين فلاقتحم العقبة وما أدراك ما العقبة فك رقبة أو إطعام في يوم ذي مسغبة يتيما ذا مقربة أو مسكينا ذا متربة ثم كان من الذين آمنوا وتواصوا بالصبر وتواصوا بالمرحمة أولئك أصحاب الميمنة والذين كفروا بآياتنا هم أصحاب المشأمة عليهم نار مؤصدة.
Thanks so much for being a part of this. I can't wait to see you guys in the next episode as we continue our uphill climb. Take care. I will see you guys soon, Insha'Allah. Assalamu alaikum.
إن الذين قالوا ربنا الله ثم استقاموا فلا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون أولئك أصحاب الجنة خالدين فيها جزاء بما كانوا يعملون.